Everybody, my name's Isaac. What we're doing here is we're going to play Kid Icarus through the end, and I'm going to see if I can't keep talking from the entire time. It's a discipline that I'm not really, familiar with. I've never been a talk show host. I'm not really an internet personality. I've written a few articles, and by articles I mean posts on Tumblr. What we're doing here is both a nostalgia trip for me, chance to travel back into my childhood and ask myself some deep searching questions about who I am and what's become of me, and an examination of the limits of my own abilities, both in terms of playing video games and in terms of being an entertaining wit and raconteur. You'll find that there may be nothing of interest whatsoever in this playthrough. Certainly from a gameplay or a history perspective, I have no new insights to offer here. What I do have to offer, though, is a kind of a deep and, possibly entertaining, depending on your point of view, self-hatred. Now, that's not going to be as entertaining as somebody, being like, oh my god, we're fighting like Wiggly Noses, Groucho Glasses, Beagle Pusses in a room and shit. But, you already know what this game is. That's not what we're here for. What we're here for on a basic level is human misery. So I first got this game when I was maybe, I want to say 6 or 7. It was the first Nintendo game I ever was given by a friend of the family who was coming in from out of town. I still, to this day, have no idea what her connection with us was. But, I remember her as being a classy lady and, business casual, who came into my room in the house that we were living in then and handed me this video game, which I guess she had bought on the recommendation of the store clerk when asked, what she could bring to a young lad of a certain age. And this was great for me because we didn't have a Nintendo at the time. And you might think, like, this person got us a... That's life right there. That's what life is. It is life in a fucking nutshell right there. You just keep going with hope in your heart until everything is taken away from you. But where was I? Yes. I vaguely remember having some sort of connection to our babysitter. She might have been like our babysitter's mom or something like that. But she seemed too young to be a mom, at least from my, limited childhood perspective at that point in time. But that's beside the point. The point is, she got me this Nintendo game and I was like, yes, this is the thin end of the wedge. This is the fulcrum that I need to get my parents to buy me a Nintendo, because up until that point we just had an Atari 2600. Guys, do you remember the Atari 2600? I played Miss Command, and I played that kind of Star Wars-y sort of kind of game where it was really hard for, a 6-year-old to play it because it involved, like, having to... fucking frogs. Fucking frogs. Where you had to play as a little ship and you got into space battles, and then occasionally you also, it was the refueling stations that got me because they were so beautiful out in the distance and you could destroy them. That was, again, like early knowledge that, anything you cared about, like if you weren't careful or you just had a momentary, lapse of concentration, anything that was beautiful that you knew about, anything that, like, was precious and unexpected could just be completely torn to shit in a moment of, carelessness, essentially. And that, among many other things, was a rooting point for my perspective, which I've taken through life. Back to the story, though. She got me this video game, and I was like, shit. I was like, Mom, Dad, you have to get me a Nintendo now, or else all of my excitement about this game will have been for naught. This game that I was given, and you will have inadvertently dealt me the first major disappointment, the first real blow of my young life. And do you want to be responsible for that? And of course they didn't. And so, come next fucking Christmas or whatever it was, not that I actually have any memory of this, there was a Nintendo under the tree. That's probably even younger than 5, actually. God, I don't know. Regardless, so my first Nintendo game, right here, right now. When I was a kid, of course, I didn't have the patience to grind this the way I'm doing now. It wouldn't have even occurred to me. I didn't know what grinding was. That word was invented, like, you know, far later. It was just sort of like a natural part of the way of the world that you had to do dull things over and over again. That's what video games were. I remember Final Fantasy, my first Western RPG. It was just like, it didn't occur to me that you had to do the boring things over and over again to get stronger. And when I figured out that that was what you had to do, God, just the fucking agony of it. The agony of doing the same thing over and over again and like not progressing because you want to play the fucking game. That's the thing about kids. The kids are the victims of poor game design. Because they don't know any better. You take these tropes on board with your life and you learn things from them. Like, from Final Fantasy, you learned that life is going to be about dull, repetitious drudgery, and that's great. But the thing that Final Fantasy doesn't teach you is that all that dull, repetitious drudgery makes you stronger. Or rather, that is what it teaches you. That all that dull, repetitious struggle inevitably leads you closer to success, and that is the part that was the fucking lie, right? That was the part that was the filthy lie. The idea that doing all of this work would eventually like lead you to something worthwhile. Like here, I got points. I got points for doing that. And those points led me to becoming stronger. When in real life, the passage of time and repetitive tasks actually break you down. They make you weaker. They make your body weaker. They injure you. And places that are injured, you get injured over and over again. So it was with a false sense of like the replicability of success that I journeyed further on into life. That's what these games did for me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There are other lessons the kid Icarus taught me. I really liked this game. I really loved how fucking weird it was. This and other early Nintendo games gave me the impression that there was something out there that I was not capable of understanding. That beyond my ken, beyond the limits of my imagination, beyond anything that I could see, that I could feel, there were these concepts that, because nothing that I had encountered in my life up to this point, had prepared me for these floating eyeballs. Nothing I had encountered up to this point in my preschool or among my little friends or in my neighborhood where I grew up had prepared me for, what do you say? For any of this nonsense. And so what this game represented to me at the time was a sign that the conclusions that I had come to about the world, the things that I knew about the world based on my fact-checking, essentially, based upon my lived experience and my observations, that wasn't necessarily all there was. There might be more things in heaven and earth that were dreamed of in my philosophy, which is a very powerful thing for a young lad, because that meant that the ironclad conclusion that I had come to, that death was inevitable, that there was nothing after death, and that I would die eventually, I might have been wrong about that. There might be something going on that excused me in some way. I knew about religion, and I knew about the idea of heaven, but it's not like my parents ever sat me down and told me it was all bullshit, but I knew it was all bullshit, right? Like most, all you had to do was think about it a little bit, and it became clear that that was all bullshit. So, that's sort of irrelevant to the general task. But this game, something this fucking strange. Man, it was a symbol of hope. This and a lot of other early NES games, it was like the visual language, the symbolic language, the music was all so foreign. So at such a remove from what I was used to. That it gave me something resembling hope. And as a result of that hope, incidentally, I grew to associate a particular kind of symbol language with that hope, with that sort of redemptive quality. Which I've always thought was, in some way, the plan, you know? 8-bit gaming is, in some way, a kind of revenge on the part of the Japanese. It was like, we're not going to inflict, you know, we can't inflict, like, physical ruination on the West as retribution for all the horrible things that happened during the war. We can't inflict economic retribution, try as we might. In the end, as an island nation, just your manufacturing base isn't going to hold out. You're not going to be able to overcome an empire the size of America, right? So what do? They said, well, we can't have our revenge in any of these ways. What we can have is revenge upon the psyches of their children. And that's where this shit came from. A desire to plant the seeds in the minds of kids. Oh, fuck me. This is not good. This is not good at all. Anyway, where was I? To plant the seeds in the minds of the youth of America of false hope. The possibility of transcendence from workaday drudgery, which in the end would be a killer for capitalism and is, you know, certainly to blame for, I think, the entitled attitude of millennials, you know, that meme that you see everywhere. It's because all these kids have their heads in their clouds, and those heads had been firmly planted in those fucking clouds by the psychological engineering of these Japanese game designers, who gave us these symbols of otherworldly hope, an exit, essentially, a way out of the glad you came, Pitt. Here, have an arrow. Donk. I'm green, so are you. Palette swapping. I didn't understand palette swapping when I was a kid. It was just like, the entire world transforms? That's the other thing. The great thing about not understanding how systems work is that it allows you like a freer and more intuitive appreciation of art. The more you learn about art, the harder it is to really get into it, I think. Fuck all of you. There we go. I didn't grind on that level. Maybe I should have. Who cares? But I digress. I'm talking about how naivete is really the only way to appreciate art, which is in turn like, on some level, part of the reason I'm doing this whole thing is because I have an appreciation for my own childhood, for my own age of innocence, and my own unfiltered both creative uptake and output that was not hampered by the expectations of others, that was not hampered by what I learned about society and how it works, just like a pure, immediate, poetic reaction to things as they are. That, you know, inevitably you lose as you're growing up. Fuck, I forgot about this. Shit. Everything's fine. Inevitably you lose that as you grow older. And I have not on some level gotten over that, even though I've reached an advanced age, which I'm not going to specify here, but which you could probably infer from the fact that this is the game of my childhood that I'm playing right now. That's sort of like that poetic, you know, sort of you see a fucking tree and you write a poem about it kind of interaction with the world. I definitely like, Oh no! I definitely brought that on board super hardcore, and I was self-conscious about it when I was a kid. I enjoyed my own, like, you know, unfiltered, like, joie de vivre when I was a kid to perhaps an unseemly extent. And, like, I never really had a plan for how I was going to be an adult. There was no model. And here's where the insidiousness of the Japanese and their game design comes in. I was led by the symbol language in this game. Oh, I should have saved up for that bottle. I'll need it. Oh well. Probably won't get through this level now. Who gives a shit? Anyway, by the Japanese and their symbol logic, their insidious symbol logic, led me to believe that if I wanted to, transcend what I felt were the limitations of my existence, then I needed to pursue images that reminded me of this, and that led me into anime and Japanese culture, and that, in turn, hell of reaffirmed or these prejudices that I already had, right? So, like, the Japanese when I say the Japanese, I'm being tongue-in-cheek here. Like, we're not talking about individual, normal Japanese people. Japan is just host to a particularly virulent and unpleasant strain of nerdery, right? Japan hosts, like, these, people who are essentially a bunch of pedophiles, right? I mean, to a greater or lesser obfuscated degree. That's what anime is, basically, is people working out their issues about childhood, their issues about innocence, and, you can talk about Japanese culture here, and cherry blossoms, and the kamikaze, and, all this stuff that, like, fetishizes youth and innocence. But I don't think it's, like, there's anything that is particularly endemic to the Japanese way of being that makes them any more guilty of this than any other people. This is something that we deal with in culture. If you want to, there is an evolutionary psychology argument to be made. People are people are meant to be attracted to the young and healthy, like, in all sorts of different ways. And sometimes it gets overboard a little bit in culture and in human beings. But in Japan, the culture has, and I don't know how this happened, the culture that ratifies and amplifies this has sort of been allowed to flourish to an extent which is frankly unhealthy. I mean, you know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, guys. Don't come to me and say that I'm being unfair, because you know this is true. It ain't healthy. And there's a prurient element in all of it, in all of them, and all of that shit. Whether you want to admit it or not, fuck me sideways, this isn't gonna work. But anyway, so, like, here I am. I am wrapped up in my own youth. I am attracted to a culture that that fetishizes youth, both in explicitly sexual and non-sexual ways. And this leaves you with, like, this horror. And you'll remember from earlier in this conversation, I already had this horror of death. It leaves you with this horror of growing older. It leaves you with this horror of becoming an adult. Not only because I felt that I could never really be a functional adult, but, that I didn't have the skills. You might have also inferred that I was a little bit of a waste, a little bit of a social malfunction, So here's the thing. Do I, for the purposes of this playthrough, go and endure that harsh training in there, even though I know I will die if I try, because I don't have the special item? Yep. Or do I forgo the item? What would be more entertaining for you? I don't give a shit. This is about me. This is my therapy session that we're all attending here. And so you can fuck off if you don't like it, essentially. We're gonna repeat the level. I am finished. Alright, starting over. As we have to start over so much in life, as we have to relearn and make the same mistakes over and over again. Do you know how many times I've gone through this level and made that same set of mistakes? Do you know how many times I forgot that I needed to get the bottle over the course of my life? Decades. Decades! Motherfucking decades of my life spent playing and occasionally replaying this game for that sort of narcotic edge of nostalgia. And for what? For what, exactly? That I can't even remember how to play this game properly. That's what. Still get bitten by a little snake with flappy arms. That's the extent of the issue that we're talking about. But I digress. Again. Let's go back and talk, like, real talk, you and I. Let's go back and talk about the situation that you're left in when you are trying to be grown up. You know, you got to be a grown up, but on some level, there are so many things pulling you back. Both your fear of adulthood and responsibility, your fear of death and dying, your fear of decay, your poetic attraction to the idea of youth and newness, and all of the media that you surround yourself, which amplifies that idea. What do you do about that? Well, I think that in the case of a lot of people, you become the most terrible fucking human beings imaginable. With all due respect, I think that a lot of the problems with male nerd culture stems from issues like that. And maybe I'm projecting, maybe it was just me. But, like, this is, I think, the root of the man-child idea, is not, like, it's not laziness necessarily, you know, and I'm not entirely certain, like, how much you can quantify laziness as a concept to begin with. It's not necessarily laziness, it's terror. It is a terror of becoming something other than what you are, which is why so many of these jokers take it as a personal affront. And now she's not even offering me the bottle. Fuck off. Which is why so many of these jokers take it as a personal affront when you suggest that they might change their minds, right? That's the worst thing that you can ask a nerd to do, is to change their mind, to take on new information. If you mention that there might be something in the world that they don't understand, you know, that might suggest that they should stop being the perfect thing that they were born as. Oh, you got a fight on your hands. So that's thing A. Thing B is is I think just sort of a philosophical attraction to the idea of the state of nature. And the thing about ideas of the state of nature is that they tend to be fucking terrible when you actually bring them into real life. Sort of ideas of strength, of power, magic, purity, soul, all this nonsense, all of it leads to terrible nationalistic, racist, you know, sexist bullshit. It leads to people being like pulled around by their cocks, essentially. Philosophies based on perversions, like the Catholic Church, for example, or male nerd culture, otaku culture. You know, there's a set of values that are derived from people's inability to come to terms with their fetishism. There's your catchphrase of the day. And so you get the intolerance that comes along with any ideology. And, just as sort of as an added bonus, you get doink, 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 doink. The madness that backs it up, because what you have, like, and there are a lot of, like, you know, fundamentalist atheists out there who suffer from this in ways which I find intermittently hilarious. You find that you're unable to change your ideological framework because you're... Fuck me sideways. Hang on just a sec. There we go. You find that you're unable to change your ideological framework because you've tied it to your gonads, essentially. You've tied it to something that is such an integral part of the way that you culturally and aesthetically relate to the world that you can't stop it. So when people, you know, when you get your Arnita Sarkeesians, or you get your who's it's like pointing out real dumb basic shit about the way the world works, you get all of this pushback because the desire to look at anime boobs isn't just about, you know, getting off, and it isn't just about, like, not wanting to change. It's become this sort of religious textured amalgamation of ideology and attraction that has both the head, the heart, and the groin aligned in the commitment to the right to objectify others. And this is the thing about the root of Inhumanity, is that all of these ideologies that let you treat other humans like animals. At the root of that is a fear of becoming inhuman yourself. At the root of that is the fear of being polluted, of becoming less the perfect thing that you consider yourself to be. So there you go. There we go. My theory of evil in the world. Basically, otakudom gone mad. An overzealous commitment to your headcanons. Because all of your headcanons are in some way connected to your genitals. I don't want to incidentally say that this is a thing that is completely endemic to dudes. It's just one of those things that comes about as a result of the action of power. I mean, as as a smart, white, middle-class human boy. Look at this. I didn't even fucking need it. I got here without it this time. What the fuck? Oh, shit. Well, anyway. There's that added sense of security. It made me better, not worse. Isn't that odd how that works out? Because I know I didn't need to struggle. It actually, it can cut both ways. But guys, why don't you think about this? Guys, politically, maybe making people suffer because they're poor is not the best way to stop them from being poor. Maybe giving them that security is actually the way to do it. Maybe the welfare state is a myth run by people whose best interest is to fuck. I'm doing a really bad job of underlining my own point here. There we go. Maybe the welfare state is a myth designed by the people who profit from that myth. Maybe. Doc. But anyway, yeah. So it is me. I'm still playing this video game. Digression after digression. Anyway, we go back to my childhood. We go back to my playing this game, and I was enamored of this game. I really loved this game. I think, reasonably. That was a pro move right there. Even though she didn't scream, her little babies came regardless. I always thought of that as a she. Is that fucked up? Little mama and her babies? Mama Reaper and the baby Reapers? Maybe? No? Did I level up again? I did. Alright, I'm gonna die immediately so that we can, come at this with a fresh outlook. Here we go. Oh fuck, forgot about that. Gotta keep dying. Just gotta keep dying. Keep dying, kiddo. Keep dying. Come on, kiddo. The things this game teaches you. Look at this. Look at this wanton self-destructiveness for strategic gain. My god, no wonder we sacrifice our bodies, sacrifice our souls, sacrifice our social lives for success. Look at these lessons. It's occurring to me that the particular mixture of facetiousness and sincerity that I've been pursuing here, it may be difficult to tell what of the things that I'm saying I believe and what of the things that I'm saying I don't believe. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe all of it. Back to my childhood, which is, I think, what you all came here to hear about, right? Back to my childhood. I played this game and I loved it. The music, I love the music particularly. It's some of the best 8-bit music in my opinion, particularly the overworld theme from World 2, which we'll get to shortly. Incidentally, in case you're wondering, I have no idea whether I'm going the right direction or not. All of those memories have long since passed, and all of these dungeons look the same. But the point of this is the journey, right? So like, if you're an expert, try not to get too frustrated. Just hang back, enjoy the ride as I become gradually complacent in my own destruction, as usual. But anyway, I love playing this game. I love the music of it. It led to two of my first disconnects with my parents. It led to two of the first breaches of understanding. Because, when you're a kid, on a basic level, you think that your parents know everything and are perfect, right? Now, that wasn't necessarily the case for me, all the time, for reasons which I'll not go into. But, I still had that like, I still had that sort of fundamental sense of connection and trust with my folks at this juncture. Now, no, fuck off. Oh, fuck off. Oh, no, fuck off. No, fuck. Oh, no, don't do it. No. Okay. I still have the fundamental sense of connection and trust, which, as makes sense. For a child of that age, here's where the eggplant wizard's nurse house is. Okay. But there were two things, right? One thing was that my dad would hum the theme music from this game to himself, because I played it all the time, and it's good music. And he was doing it wrong. Yeah? He wasn't getting it right. The notes were off. And I was like, no, you're not doing it right. Here's how it goes. And I would hum, clearly also in my childish warble, what it was actually like, and he wasn't able to adjust to get it. And it occurred to me, maybe one of the first times it occurred to me, that my perceptions might not be universally applicable. That is, whoop. It was entirely possible that what I was hearing when I listened to the music from this game, what my father was hearing, my father, who, is like one of the persons in my life to whom I am the closest, even to this day. We've had our ups and downs, we've had our rocky patches, but, we understand each other on a very basic level. We have a similar interaction with language, we have a similar interaction with politics, we have a similar interaction with sort of the conceptual breakdown of the world around us. We're both like, deeply existential, depressed human beings, right? But he just clearly was not hearing the same things that I was hearing. And if that was true, what else could be different, right? Hang on, can't get hit with an eggplant here. There you go. There we go. Everything's fine. It's all good. What could be the next, are we not seeing the same colors? Are we not like, are we, perhaps most of the point, are we not responding to the same beauty? Because that was the thing. It was it was like one of my earliest moments of understanding that aesthetics were subjective rather than objective. You get people complaining at this point that kids in schools are taught, that moral relativism has taken over schools. There was a fucking editorial in the New York Times about this recently, about how, nobody's actually getting taught the difference between right and wrong anymore, when like 10 seconds of thought will tell you that's because that would require the state to determine a universal code of morals, and we don't live in a fucking theocracy. It's like, but, reactionary, like, faux naive ideologues aside, there are complaints that we are leaving behind the moral education of our children in favor of dry facts and figures, and I like, and teaching the test, and I appreciate that. I think that school should be about teaching kids, fuck that. I think school should be about teaching kids how to become citizens, not how to necessarily read and write and spell their own names. Ideally both, but like becoming good citizens is kind of the important thing. But there we go. Fuck. Oh, we got to a hard part and I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, but I think I think it's bullshit that kids aren't actually taught the difference between right or wrong. What kind of a boo-boo do you have to be to actually make that mistake? But also and additionally, there is the problem where there's this thing for me where like the main thing that a lot of people still don't grasp. Like, you know, and people who say this thing, well, it's all moral relativism. You know, they're all taught to, you know, consider other people's point of view instead of, whoa, okay, dude. Instead of, like, you know, instead of thinking about what's right and wrong. But people don't actually do that. They're like so many grown adults, and particularly grown adults of my tribe, once again, the nerds, the hipsters, the hipster nerds, people with record collections, people with vinyl figurines, who can't seem to grasp that they're, you know, the whole conservative concept of there being a canon, of there being, like, you know, primary works of art in any given thing, that's been debunked ages ago. This is the problem with not being, you know, with not having, you know, some curiosity about the way that other cultures work. Look at my little bubblies. Look at them bubble. It's gonna make everything so much easier, guys. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so cultural relativism. You know, first of all, you know, nonsense to start with. The idea that that's taken over, because people still can't get their heads around the idea that that what they experience when they listen to music, what they see when they look at art, might not be universal and might in fact be based entirely on the contents of their own heads. But that was my first inkling that that might not be the case when I was a kid. And of course it took me a lot longer to, you know, properly process the lesson there. But, nope. I think we might pause this at this point, actually. My roommates have gotten home and they appear to have some opinions about something. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Cheerio, y'all.